back like we never left. It's Double Loop Sports. I'm Big Baby Stef. I'm here with the boy, the fantasy phenom, Alex Lott. And it is officially redraft season. It's in full swing. We have guys drafting this Sunday in their home leagues, in their 10 or 12 team PPR redraft league. It's happening. I have a home league draft coming up next weekend. So there's a lot going on. This is draft season. And we both just come back from vacations. You can see I'm rocking a totally different background. I know no one's watching Double Move Sports for my background, but different background because there's some things in flux, but it's all good, positive things. Alex, you're fresh off of vacay. Hopefully your mind's clear and you're ready to break down some new look offenses here in 2022 because that's what we're diving into today.
Yeah, I know we've had a little break from the YouTube channel, but I will say our Discord has still been popping in full swing. So that's in the link below. Join that. If you want to hang out with us, ask us questions, whether it's redraft, dynasty, especially in these drafts, in draft season, like the community's been such a good resource for figuring out ADPs, figuring out new stats and new information about these players.
And here's one of the things, Alex, I have to say about the Discord, because for a lot of people, you think, oh, I'm going to join this Discord channel. Like, I don't want to be active. I don't want to have to like manufacture takes or come up with like things to write about football.
Then don't.
You can just sit in there and lurk. You sit in there and lurk, and you see me and Alex getting into debates, justifying ADPs, talking about trades, just adjusting keeper values. And this is all just free, and you can be a passive bystander watching us drop our takes there against the community. So hop in that Discord channel. I'm stoked right now. There's a lot of good momentum in that Discord.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other good thing is it gets you access to, I don't want to harp on the Discord for too long, Steph, but we randomly will jump into Discord live streams where we're just hanging out, talking in the Discord server with our community members, answering questions, going through mock drafts, evaluating rosters. So couldn't recommend that enough if you just want more Double Move Sports, because when we're taking breaks from the YouTube channel, which we won't be doing anytime soon now that we're refreshed and ready to go for the season and we're getting into full swing. Training camp news is coming out left, right, and center. But when you're just craving more Double Move Sports, it's always on in the Discord. So get in there right now in the link below, and it's free to join.
Subscribe to the YouTube, like the video, join the Discord. That's all we're ever going to sell you. There's nothing else, okay? We have rankings for free. Everything else is free. This is all we're trying to sell you. But, Alex, let's jump into this because I'm so stoked to just, one, talk football, but also talk about my Super Bowl favorite. Right now, I'm all in on the Denver Broncos with newly acquired Russell Wilson in a high-powered AFC West. This is an offense that's going to look completely different, and we've seen that across the board. We've seen Javonte going in the top 12 running backs. We have Sutton and Judy taking massive bumps in ADP. Tim Patrick's interesting. Albert O is interesting. But I'm just excited about Russ. I mean, this is one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the Super Bowl era, like ever in the game of football. 6.2% touchdown percentage over his career, third highest all time, fourth highest passer rating all time, top 10 all time in yards per attempt, adjusted net yards per attempt, tied for the most fourth quarter comebacks and game-winning drives since 2012 when he entered the league. Russell Wilson brings a whole new dimension to this offense that just wasn't there with Teddy Bridgewater game managing. It just couldn't happen. And so that's why I'm in on Sutton at price. I'm really excited to talk about Judy. But, Alex, what are your initial thoughts of how this offense is going to look in 2022?
I honestly could not be more in on the Denver Broncos. I love the Super Bowl pick, Steph. I think it's a little bit of a high take just because there are so many new pieces. The AFC West is so competitive.
Brady goes to Tampa year one, wins a Super Bowl. Stafford, Rams year one. Broncos, Russ year one. I'm just saying there's a trend.
There is a trend, but from a fantasy perspective, like I think they're going to be a great team. That's awesome. But from a fantasy perspective, I couldn't be more in on these guys. And I actually love the values on the majority of their players right now. I will say there's a couple that are a little bit questionable, but when you look at the key pieces for this team, Russell Wilson right now, I'm picking him up in the 8th, 9th round sometimes. He's going as the QB 8 off the board. He's going behind. I've seen him go behind like Trey Lance in some of these drafts. And to me, I am just going to wait and take Russell Wilson everywhere I can because I think the upside is just so tremendous. And I would not be surprised. Your hot take is Broncos are winning the Super Bowl. My hot take is I think Russell Wilson finishes as the QB1 this year in fantasy. I know it's incredibly spicy, but he's done it once before in Seattle with hyper efficiency back in 2017. And get this, his career high in pass attempts is 558. He finished as the QB6 that season. And now they're giving him Nathaniel Hackett, and this offense is giving him the reins to run a fast-paced, up-tempo offense where he can actually maybe get above 600 attempts for the first time. And who knows, maybe even 650, 700 attempts for Russell Wilson in Denver. When Peyton Manning came over, we saw him absolutely explode onto the scene. I know it was a completely different team, a completely different regime at that point. But last season, Tom Brady led the NFL in pass attempts, 719. Herbert was at 672. Josh Allen's at 646. Mahomes at 658. Like, all these guys are over 100 attempts more than Russell Wilson's previous career high. And we're talking about the efficiency of a guy like Russell Wilson. Yes, the efficiency could taper off a little bit if he has 100 more attempts. But Russell Wilson with 650 pass attempts and a bit of a rushing floor as well. I know that's not his primary game now like it used to be earlier in his career. But there is a clear path here for Russell Wilson to be a top 3 quarterback and, like my hot take, potentially be the number 1 quarterback in fantasy.
Last year, the Broncos were 28th in pace of play with Teddy Bridgewater at the helm. Got to imagine that's going to go up. And I don't even think necessarily Russ is going to have some crazy pass volume this year. They have the 2 good running backs in Denver. Historically, Denver does like to run the ball a decent amount. Now having the 2 capable backs, they can essentially keep both guys fresh. They can run it like a Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, like we've seen in Cleveland over the last couple of years as well. So what we do know is that the pace of play is going to be higher. But what we've seen from Nathaniel Hackett is just letting the quarterback dictate the pace of play, right? With him and Aaron Rodgers, right? And Hackett gets memed on all the time of like, what's he really done? Because he had Aaron Rodgers as the starting QB for his career, at least notably so far. So what we saw, though, is that Rodgers was able to run his offense that he wanted to run. He's able to drain the clock better than anybody in the NFL. He's always trying to get people at the line of scrimmage to jump off sides. Like, he's going to let Russ do what he wants to do. And it seems like part of the request for Russell Wilson to get out of Seattle was about that pace. We saw even last year, I know he had the thumb injury, definitely slowed him down the stretch, really hurt DK Metcalf, really hurt Tyler Lockett in Seattle. But even the year before, where he started the year super, super pass heavy, and then we hit about week 8, week 9, and then we see Seattle and Pete Carroll get back to their old ways. So I think Russ wanted to maintain that volume that is going down narrative street a little bit, but we know it's going to be better than 28th in the league. And that makes Courtland Sutton a guy who's very interesting as a high-end wide receiver too. I have him in the same tier as guys like Terry McLaurin right now in my rankings. If we look at Jerry Jeudy, he's a little bit lower, and I'm fine with both of these guys at cost. Jeudy right now on underdog, wide receiver 23. So at low end, wide receiver 2, I think that's perfect for him. What we have not seen is Sutton and Jeudy both be productive on the field at the same time. That's the number one question mark, right? When Jeudy was out last year, Sutton had a dominant stretch. Jeudy comes back in, gets muted a little bit. We saw Jeudy with no Sutton get the massive air yard season with Drew Lock, had like over 1,500 air yards, horrible catch percentage, terrible efficiency, but he did get the air yards, which is what you want to see in receivers. Alex, I'm curious, are you in on Jeudy as a guy with a high ceiling, or do you view him as more of a floor play?
I think both of these guys have a high ceiling. And with Jeudy, we really haven't had the opportunity to see what he can do at the NFL level. I mean, he flashed as a rookie. Last season, missed a bunch of time with the injury, and the offense has been terrible and slow for both of those seasons. So now give him a full offseason. He's back to 100% health. Give him the quarterback upgrade. Give him an offense with some more volume. And we could start to see Jerry Jeudy actually have a high ceiling and a high floor. So I'm with you. I like Sutton and Jeudy right now at cost. If I can get Sutton in the 4th or Jeudy in the 5th, I'm taking that all day. I'd love to have them as my wide receiver 2 if I've got 2 really strong running backs as well. And even Tim Patrick as a deep sleeper. I see him just about free a lot of the time. And if Sutton or Jeudy miss any games, Patrick almost becomes a premium flex play in all those weeks. And even if Sutton and Jeudy are active, I still think you can put Tim Patrick out there and hope for a solid performance if you have a 2 flex league or a 3 wide receiver league.
14
And
team.
Steph, the interesting thing about the volume in this offense, I know they have the 2 running backs, you have the 3 receivers, even Albert O and Dulcich are a little bit interesting at tight end. But this team is going to face the Chargers twice, the Raiders twice, the Chiefs twice, and we could see these pop weeks in these shootout games. Out of division, they also play the Cardinals, they play the Rams, they play the Ravens. So they have a lot of games that could have these high over-unders that have shootout potential, and that could artificially inflate and give us the upside that we want from some of these names, especially, the names like a Tim Patrick. When you're thinking, hey, when's the right week to play Tim Patrick? Probably when they're playing the Chargers and the over-unders 56 points. So those are the kind of things you look for with this team. I think the values are all good except one, Javonte Williams. Love him in Dynasty. I think he's going to be good in redraft, but RB11, depending on the platform, I've seen him as RB8, RB9 in some places as well. So taking Javonte Williams in the late second round, early third round is just a little bit early for me. I think even a name like Ezekiel Elliott could easily finish the season higher than Javonte Williams, but I understand the hype. It's all about that upside and the fact that Javonte Williams, if everything goes right, if he is, a 70-30 split with Melvin Gordon this year instead of the 50-50 split on this offense, Javonte does have that top 5 running back potential, and that's kind of why you're reaching and drafting him late in the second, early in the third round. So Javonte is the one I haven't been taking quite as much in my best ball drafts. And when I look at the board and the ADPs at the position, I'm a little bit hesitant, especially Saquon Barkley is another name going around him, where I probably would prefer Saquon. Leonard Fournette, I know he's a little bit older, but those are the kind of names you're going to have to pick Javonte over. And I get it if you want the max ceiling, go for it. But Melvin Gordon, he was good last year, and he's back. He could have gone somewhere else. They decided to bring him back. And Melvin Gordon at running back 37, I'm honestly fine to just wait and take Melvin Gordon deep in my draft as my running back 4, running back 5, could give you week-to-week production. And then if Javonte misses time, Melvin Gordon's a must play every single week.
Yeah, Melgo did not look like he had dropped at all in his athleticism and his skill set. He was still very, very good on the field. If you look at their stat lines over the season, Javonte and Melgo pretty much put up identical seasons, same amount of volume down to the carry. And so if you look at that, and everyone's so excited about Javonte, we have him, our people have him as this RB1 in ADP. Well, Melvin Gordon give you darn near the same thing, and you can get him as your RB4 on your roster, even RB5 in some leagues where he falls. Certainly he's going to be a premium in 14-team leagues, super deep leagues where you just need stability sometimes at RB2, especially in these hero RB roster builds. So let's stay in the West, but let's jump over to the NFC West and talk about the San Francisco 49ers, another team with a new starting quarterback. And I flamed a few people the other day. I got to be honest. I got to come clean. I flamed people that were telling me back in April that there's no way Trey Lance is going to be the starter with Jimmy G on the roster. Shanahan comes out yesterday and says this is Trey Lance's team. Jimmy G is healthy and available, but he will not be the starter for San Francisco, and it's because they paid so much to move up to that 3rd overall spot in the draft to take Trey Lance. They had to start him. They invested too much. They gave up first-round picks. They had to play this kid and see what they have. We know he has a massive ceiling. He showed a little bit of flash last year. Certainly with the rushing, he absolutely did. Love the volume that we were seeing from Trey Lance last year. And with that comes a lot of questions about the rest of this offense. So let's talk about what the 49ers are going to look like with Trey Lance in 2022.
I actually love Trey Lance himself for fantasy this season, and I like Elijah Mitchell at value. We'll get into him a little bit later. But I think I'm out on the passing game. It's one of those situations where I'm in on the San Francisco running game and I'm out on the passing game. And fortunately, with a guy like Trey Lance who's so mobile, the running game does encompass him as that rushing quarterback because that's the cheat code. That's how you get the premium upside. But I do worry about the volume in this offense. And this is an offense that even last season with Jimmy Garoppolo was pretty low volume. And there's a lot of premier players that you're drafting at these pass catching positions. You look at Deebo Samuel going in the second round, sometimes falling to the third, but most of the time going in the second. And then even George Kittle, who his ADP has dropped a little bit this year versus years past, but I've seen him consistently going no later than the 4th. So when you think about this team with Deebo Samuel and George Kittle, and then you've got names like Brandon Ayuk out there as well, some targets are going to be spread between even Jawan Jennings and some of the rookies. I don't expect a ton to go to those guys, but there are some more mouths to feed in this offense. It's not going to be, 80% targets consolidated between just Debo, Kittle, and Ayuk. And I just worry about the volume. When Trey Lance started last season, I know he was a rookie. I know they wanted to keep training wheels on, but he started 2 games and he had 26 pass attempts per game, which would put him right around like 425 pass attempts on the season, which would be towards the very, very bottom of the NFL. I don't expect Trey Lance to be a guy as raw of a prospect as he is to be completing 68, 70% of passes. I think we could see him closer to 60, 62%, which is actually pretty low historically for the NFL. Last year, he completed 57% of passes. So, I don't think the completion numbers are going to be very high. I think in PPR leagues, you're going to see guys like Debo Samuel and George Kittle suffer a little bit in that passing game just because you're not going to see these 8, 9, 10 reception games from him. They might have a pop here or there, but I don't think we can expect that consistently. And I think it's going to be a lot more boom bust for the passing offense in 2022. But on the flip side, I like Trey Lance himself for the rushing ability. In his 2 starts, we saw him go, 16 carries in the first one for 89 yards. In the second one, only 8 carries for 31 yards. But I think we'll consistently see Trey Lance having 10, 12 carries per game. And I almost think he could be almost like a Jalen Hurts this year, where from an NFL perspective, he's a little bit raw, a little bit inaccurate. His weapons might have some pop weeks and some inconsistency, but he's going to be a top quarterback and could have some weeks where he's the QB1, could be the QB5, looking at quarterbacks, in week 12. And it's like, holy smoke, Trey Lance has been kind of hit or miss from an NFL perspective, but here he is as the top 5 quarterback just because of the rushing upside. So in terms of the passing game, that's what I want to start with. That's how I feel. I've been pretty much out on Debo at cost. I've been pretty much out on George Kittle at cost and haven't been taking a lot of Brandon Ayuk either. So Steph, are you with me? Are you down on this offense? Do you think the transition from Jimmy Garoppolo to Trey Lance suppresses the value of these pass catchers? Or do you think there's more of the same from what we saw last year with guys like Debo and George Kittle kind of defying the odds with their efficiency and their ability after the catch?
Yeah. And it's a tough question to answer because I think there's a pretty wide range of outcomes here. The one guy who is a value to me at cost right now going as a wide receiver 43 off the board in the Lazard, Tony range, and a guy that I'm happy to have as a deep flex play, just a guy on my roster to give me some boom upside weeks, and that's Brandon Ayuk. That's the only guy, just because Trey Lance does have that cannon of an arm. Brandon Ayuk had some pop games. He had some touchdowns, and we know he's great with the ball after the catch. So Ayuk's the one that I like just because he is the cheapest. Debo, I'm starting to come around in the 3rd round, where if I'm going, let's say, Austin Eckler in the top 4 or 5 picks in the first, circle back with an Aaron Jones or a Leonard Fournette, and then pick up that Debo Samuel in the early 3rd. That's the only time I've got my hands on him because I don't want him at wide receiver 8. I'm not taking him early over these stable running backs just because there's so much uncertainty with what this offense is going to look like. And I think the range of outcomes are probably somewhere in the middle between Josh Allen's first 2 years in the league and Jalen Hurts last year. Okay, if you look at, and this is kind of reiterating your takes on Trey Lance being a guy that we want tons of shares of everywhere, dynasty, redraft, every format that values quarterback, you need Trey Lance. And I love him going as the QB9 off the board. This is exactly the type of player that we want as a rookie in year 2 that's shown flashes. We've seen the year 2 breakout from Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, Mahomes. I think year 2 is the year to invest in these quarterbacks and see if they pop. Hurts was the case study for that last year. We're not going to beat a dead horse here. Lance is the guy that you want. But I think he truly does have QB1 upside. Mm-hmm. Just like
Jalen and that's
Hurts
what we saw from
year.
Hurts last season. There was a chance halfway through the season. It was like, oh my gosh, he could do it. He didn't, but there was a shot.
And it's interesting because I think the weapons will be the reason that happens. Right? There's other Russian quarterbacks that are going to put up numbers. Lamar Jackson's going to put up numbers this year. Kyler Murray is going to put up numbers. Josh Allen certainly is going to put up numbers. Right? And these are all Russian quarterbacks and get it done with their legs. With the weapons being so good, though, I have to believe that Lance gets a higher ceiling through the air. Like the floor is the rushing, the ceiling is the receiving that he's going to generate in the passing volume because he has such good weapons around him. If you look at Jalen Hurts' first year, You look at Josh Allen, first year in the league. Most targeted receiver was Zay Jones. It was Kelvin Benjamin, Robert Foster, big play Charles Clay. Nothing there for Josh Allen. You look at Josh Allen's second year. And these are years where he finished as the QB 14 in fantasy points per game and the QB 11 in fantasy points per game after finishing as the QB 1 for 2020 and 2022. But second year in the league, Josh Allen's top receiving target, John Brown, 115 targets, followed by Cole Beasley, Dawson Knox. So until they put Diggs around Josh Allen, he wasn't able to take that step. Where many people, including us, are predicting a jump for Jalen Hurts this year. We're smashing on Jalen Hurts everywhere in all formats because bringing A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith in year 2, Goddard is a solid piece, Gainwell hopefully taking that step through the air as well. Lance is coming into a perfect situation because he has Ayuk, he has Debo, he has Kittle, 3 of the best yards after the catch receivers in the NFL. So he has to be the guy you want. Now, Kittle at tight end 5, it's whatever. I'm not really – I don't want to say in on him because I just hate that zone of tight end altogether. If I don't get, Kelsey, Waller, Andrews at value, I'm probably just going to wait and get an Albert O, a Hayden Hurst, even an Austin Hooper, just these upside tight end names, David Njoku if Deshaun Watson doesn't get any suspensions prior to your draft. And then Debo, wide receiver 8, we talked about him. Now, the run game is going to be very interesting because we have Elijah Mitchell going out the board right now, RB23, Tyrion Davis-Price, RB48. TDP is the guy that I'm smashing on everywhere in underdog in any redraft league because I do think he has some upside in this offense, especially in an offense where a lot of the running backs go down. And I know Jeff Wilson's still there. There's some other names in that backfield in San Francisco. Trey Sermon's still there. But, Alex, are you with me on being essentially all in on TDP at RB48?
I think I am. I'm all in on TDP at RB48 because of the value, but I'm also all in on Jeff Wilson undrafted because of the value. I'm also all in on Elijah Mitchell at RB23 because of the value. Because to me, the only reason we'd be in on TDP is just saying we think Elijah Mitchell is going to get hurt. TDP, Trey Sermon, Jeff Wilson, these guys are not going to take the job from Elijah Mitchell unless Elijah Mitchell misses time. And I understand why that's a common thought process is because Elijah Mitchell missed several games last season with several different injuries. So chances are he could miss time in 2022 as well. Most running backs miss a couple games. I just don't see Elijah Mitchell giving up this job. He absolutely dominated last season. He was given all of the carries in this offense. It's the same coaching staff. Nothing has changed. He's had another year under his belt. They've talked about him being the lead back. I just don't see why Elijah Mitchell wouldn't get all the work on the ground with occasionally you mix in a TDP or Jeff Wilson, whichever one you like more in the receiving and pass protection game on third downs. Because if we look at Elijah Mitchell's workload last season, it was ridiculous. Most weeks, I mean, he kind of got ramped up slow, 19 carries, 17 carries, but that was as a sixth round rookie in his first 2 games, getting 19 and 17 carries, eventually takes over the job in week 10. Fully gets 27 carries that week, misses a game, fresh off the injury, gets another 27 carries, then 22 carries. Then he's out for 3 games and comes right back into 21 carries for back-to-back weeks. Even into the playoffs, he averaged close to 20 carries per game and was the lead guy for this offense. So he had a fantastic rookie season. He's got speed. He fits the Shanahan scheme. And unless he gets hurt, there's no way these other guys are going to have value. Now, I get it. San Francisco's had a different running back every single year. They've had guys get hurt every single year. So that's why it's a common belief to say, hey, TDP could have value. Jeff Wilson could have value. But these guys aren't taking the job from Elijah Mitchell. An injury is going to have to happen for those guys to have value. So I like them as handcuffs. I like them, TDP, if you take him super late in your draft and Elijah Mitchell, maybe he gets hurt in training camp. Maybe he gets hurt in week 2. And TDP is a tremendous value and can be a week-to-week play for you. I like that, but that's where the upside comes. They're just handcuffs, honestly, to me.
I disagree with you to a degree because I think last year Elijah Mitchell, number 3 in the NFL with an 80.8% opportunity share, is a massive outlier for a guy with his draft capital and his stature. I know he's a Shanahan guy. They made it very apparent that I guess, Sermon was a Lynch pick. Mitchell was a Shanahan pick. I don't know
we
how
loved
true.
Mitchell as a prospect. We did.
We were all in on Mitchell. We made a lot of people a lot of money talking about Elijah Mitchell on this channel. But I think TDP was brought in to take off some of that workload. I don't think there's any expectation that Elijah Mitchell can carry for 17 games or anywhere close to it with 20-plus carries a game. I think TDP was brought in to take 8 to 12 carries a game, maybe some goal line short yardage stuff. I think E. Mitchell definitely profiles to be the passing down back. That's certainly not going to be part of TDP's game at all. He was not.
It's not really Mitchell's game either. Maybe that's where Jeff Wilson comes in.
It was in college. And I know they don't target the running back a lot, right? They have Debo there for short yardage. They have Kittle there for short yardage. Even Ayuk can be used in a gadgety role at times.
Less than 2 targets a game last year for Mitchell, but you're right. More of a function of the offense.
Well, last year he finished as RB14 in fantasy points per game. So right now going at RB23, I think that reduction in volume is already baked into that cost. And so I'm with you in a certain roster build where I'm looking in that dead zone, right? I'm not getting excited for David Montgomery. Breece Hall's already off the board. James Conner's off the board. Gibson's off the board. A.J. Dillon, Josh Jacobs, J.K. Dobbins, and then you have this tier of Elijah Mitchell, Miles Sanders, Tony Pollard, Chase Edmonds, and Elijah Mitchell to me is much closer to the A.J. Dillon, J.K. Dobbins, Josh Jacobs tier than he is this pure backup or even a 1B like a Pollard, like a Miles Sanders. And we'll talk about Chase Edmonds here in a minute when we talk about the Miami Dolphins. And let's go ahead and jump into that, Alex. This is another new look offense, not from the quarterback in the case of the last 2 teams we just talked about, but in the case of a whole new set of weapons, a whole new coaching staff, brought into Miami, a whole new offensive philosophy. It's clear that the front office in Miami has said, look, we are going to do whatever it takes to make Tua work. Right? We want to give him every opportunity to be that young stud QB that turns us into a contender because we have him on the cheap contract, even if it means bringing in a system that typically tries to protect the quarterback. And I hate that narrative because I actually do think Tua has a much better deep ball than Jimmy G. I don't think that's a hot take for me to say, but the efficiency was there when it came to the deep ball from Tua last year. It just wasn't part of his game that much. It was not part of the offense to throw deep passes for Tua last year because their offensive line was so bad, because the system was not set up. So it was all Jalen Waddle on the checkdowns. It was the mix of Gaskin and a bunch of other running backs on the checkdowns. So now you get Tyreek Hill brought into the offense. You get Cedric Wilson. I think that's just a better football move that's not really fantasy relevant. And then you have Teron Armstead, a couple other O-line investments, and Chase Edmonds is brought in. They put just Gesicki on the franchise tag. But Alex, I'm curious what you expect the Dolphins offense to look like, because a lot of people are simply copy and pasting over the 49ers system with Mike McDaniels coming over from that system. Are you in on that narrative, or do you think it's going to look a little different with different personnel?
Oh, it's so hard. I think the Dolphins is the one that I've had the most trouble with. And part of it's because the new personnel. Part of it's because we still have only seen so much from Tua. And then part of it is the new coaching staff. And yeah, I think it's interesting because what they're doing with this roster, it does kind of remind me of what San Francisco did. Like the running backs, Raheem Mostert came over. That's a clear signal that they want these speedy backs that can run in between the tackles and get downfield. Edmonds is interesting because he is fast, but he is predominantly a pass catcher. At least that's how he was used in Arizona. So we just talked about San Francisco doesn't pass it much to the running back. I wonder what kind of volume is going to go to the running back in this offense. So it's tough. And I think Chase Edmonds at running back 32 right now is one of the best values in drafts. If you want to go with one of these hero RB or zero RB strategies, at RB 32, you got nothing to lose with Chase Edmonds, because I think there's a chance that they use him in that feature back role. There's a chance he gets 10 to 15 carries per game and seeing 4 or 5 targets a game as well in this offense as the lead guy. I don't think that's out of the range of outcomes. So that's the upside from a volume perspective. But he's the best running back on this team. He's probably going to be the starter on this team. I know they have Sony Michel, who they brought in as well. Gaskin, I think, is still there. So you could say it's crowded, but he's the best back on the team. And for a starting running back who can catch passes to be going as the RB32 just makes absolutely no sense, especially when you look at some drafts and he's going behind guys that are handcuffs. He's going behind guys that are backups. Like if I pull up the PPR ADPs right now, Chase Edmonds is going behind Tony Pollard. He's going behind Miles Sanders, who has a ton of question marks. He's going behind Damian Harris, who's going to be splitting work with Ramondre Stevenson out this season. So in these PPR leagues, he's just going in this range. Like he's Kenneth Walker, Melvin Gordon, Ramondre Stevenson, Michael Carter. Those are the names around Chase Edmonds, and those guys aren't even clear starters. So, like, I think Edmonds is a good value. That's probably all I'm touching in the running game. But then if we look at the receivers, I think Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are so controversial. And I know how I feel about them. I think we disagree. But, Steph, I want to ask you first. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, what do you think about these receivers? Tyreek Hill currently going as the wide receiver 9. Jalen Waddle going as the wide receiver 18 around later. Are you in on either of these guys or both of these guys or neither of these guys at value?
Yeah, we're having an interesting tier of players, a type of player in 2022 that's a fantastic yak receiver with proven production that we know is good at football, that is in either a murky or bad situation or perceived bad situation, and it's Deebo Samuel, Tyreek Hill, and A.J. Brown. All three of these guys we know are yak monsters. So it comes down to how much do you value yards after the catch and just being one of those guys where if the ball is in their hands, there's a chance it could go to the house on any given touch, right? Whether it's through the air or on the ground, whether it's in the red zone or from the 40. Like there's always a chance that these guys could take it to the house. So how much do you value the player versus their situation? And so for me, I'm putting Tyreek Hill right there with A.J. Brown. I put him just a touch above A.J. Brown because I think the volume in Miami a little bit will be better than the volume in Philly. And I think we've seen Tua be more productive. But one thing that is interesting is that if you look at Tyreek Hill's depth of target last year, his efficiency metrics, he actually wasn't used as this one-dimensional, down the outside speedster. He was very much a close to the line of scrimmage receiver. There's a great video that Brett Coleman just put out on YouTube breaking down the comparison of the Chiefs and the Dolphins. There is a lot of similarities of at least how they will use Tyreek Hill, I think. And the way we saw it done last year is when defenses would stop the deep ball or focus on stopping the deep ball for Kansas City, they would then focus on Tyreek near the line of scrimmage. And we saw him be one of those guys that any play can go to the house. He's so shifty. He's so electric. He's so elusive. You cannot bring him down. And these guys typically don't take huge hits because they're able to get out of balance and they're just that darn fast. So Tyreek is certainly a guy I'm fine with as my wide receiver 1. I don't love it, but certainly if the value is there, I'm willing to push my chips in. Right now, going off the board, wide receiver 9. So right behind Deebo and ADP. To me, that just the way I'm drafting, the way the roster builds are going this year, I'm probably going running back at that late round 2, mid round 2. So I don't have many Tyreek shares, but I don't think there's a death sentence in his future just because he's in Miami now with Tua.
Yeah, I like Tyreek. I'd take him over Deebo this season. I just think the volume in Miami is going to be better than the volume in San Francisco. And you said it, I think the pure talent of Tyreek Hill trumps the downgrade of the offense. And you said it, yes, he is one of these burners downfield, but so much of his production, similar to Deebo Samuel, does come after the catch with that speed. So I think he and Jalen Waddle are honestly going to be a nightmare for defenses. The question becomes, is there really going to be enough volume for both Waddle and Tyreek to return on these ADPs? Like they would both have to be top 15, top 18 wide receivers. Waddle last season, even as a rookie, was really propped up by volume, 140 targets in that rookie season. They still have Mike Gesicki as well. You mentioned they brought in Cedric Wilson. They're probably going to target the running backs a little bit with Chase Edmonds as a pass-catching back. So I just wonder if Jalen Waddle's only getting 120, 130 targets and Tyreek comes in to lead the team in targets, I actually worry a lot more about Waddle at his ADP than Tyreek. And I find myself taking Tyreek in the late second a lot more frequently than I do taking Jalen Waddle in the third. I think Tyreek is going to be the 1A and the clear number 1 in this offense. So that's where I've been pushing my chips, and I'd much rather have Tyreek even around earlier than Jalen Waddle, just because we've seen the sample size with Tyreek for so many seasons, truly being a one-of-a-kind player, and we know what he can do with the ball in his hands. So I think both are going to be fine. I think it's obviously good for Tua, but he's no more than a streamer probably to start out at this point. Maybe has some breakout potential. But yeah, I'm in on Tyreek Hill, and I have him firmly in my top 8 wide receivers right now. So I really do like him at that value.
Wow. Okay, you're very in on Tyreek. For Waddle, he's kind of similar to Brandon Ayuk. We make the San Fran, McDaniel, Shanahan comparisons where Waddle in an empty receiver room balled out. That's the exact same thing we saw from Brandon Ayuk as a rookie, where once Debo went down, once Kittle went down, he was absolutely the guy on pace to do crazy things from a fantasy perspective, big splash plays, hurdling guys to get in the end zone. And I think Waddle could have that type of production this year, but I think he's going to have a much higher floor. He was drafted higher. He's a more highly touted prospect and player, and his year one production was much better and more consistent. So I think I view Waddle as just a better Brandon Ayuk, which makes him a guy I'm fine with as a flex. Hopefully I don't have to put him as my wide receiver too, just because I don't know what that system's going to look like. But he's certainly one of those players where you can kind of call your shot based on how the roster construction is building. If you're going with Keenan Allen and Mike Evans, right, these safe, known commodities, and you're like, what's that extra name that I can add to this receiver room to take me over the top, give me some boom potential? Totally fine with Waddle for those roster builds as a flex in that 4th round is probably where I'm taking him, maybe late 3rd. But Alex, let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. We saw Tyreek go from the Dolphins to the Chiefs. We're going to go – or I'm sorry, Chiefs to the Dolphins. We're going to go Dolphins to Chiefs, Chiefs, Dolphins, Dolphins, Chiefs. This now is a situation – I'm confused too. But what's also really confusing is the fact that we don't really know after Travis Kelce how to view these Kansas City weapons. We don't know how to view this backfield. Now, we talked about in our last episode, we are in at Ronald Jones at his RB 41 ADP. Since we dropped those takes, he has gone up 1 spot in ADP. So not a ton is changing. People are not shifting their minds quick enough on Rojo. I think he's still a value right now. We'll see if he continues to creep over time. I know CEH hit the pup a little bit so far over camp. So if CEH is for whatever reason on the pup, or they come out and say, hey, he's going to have to earn his snaps again this year, I think Rojo's ADP could skyrocket. So let's just talk about what happens in this receiver room, because right now we have Juju going off the board, wide receiver 27. We have Sky Moore, wide receiver 47. And Marquez Valdes-Scantling actually going 3 spots higher as far as the wide receiver position. At wide receiver 44 ahead of Sky Moore, which I think is pretty spicy. MVS really hasn't gotten me too excited, but we know Kelce is like right now tight end 1 ADP. I think it's fine. Whatever. Mahomes, same old. I think he's still going to find a way to get it done. Right now, people are putting him behind Justin Herbert, and I think that is smart just because Herbert has the upgrade in weaponry versus Mahomes having the downgrade. Really where the ambiguity lies, Alex, is between Juju, MVS, and Sky Moore. Help me sort out what this offense is going to look like with Kelce getting the extra money this year, changing his contract around. Like, I know he's getting older, right? But he looks to be set for a career year at age 32, 33.
The truth is, and I'll break down my preferences and how I think it's going to look in a second, but the truth is between Juju, MVS, Sky Moore, you can even throw Mecole Hardman in there. I don't think anyone has any idea. Like, MVS got the most money of the group. I think we'd all agree that he's probably not the one we're going to put our chips on to be the breakout Tyreek Hill replacement, and I don't think Tyreek Hill can be replaced anyway. But the truth is, we have no idea. We'll read the tea leaves and try to give our insight here in a second, but I'm taking every single one of these guys at their current value, including Mecole Hardman, because I think Juju at wide receiver 27, he is the one that I think has the highest floor. He is the most likely, in my opinion, to take targets in this offense and to lead the team in targets behind Travis Kelce. I think if I had to bet on one guy behind Kelce, it's Juju to maybe get 120, 130 targets. Yes, the ADOT might be a little bit lower, but in PPR leagues, he could be this target funnel in the slot. He's a threat in the red zone as well. He could be who knows? Juju could have, 80 receptions for 850 yards and like 14 touchdowns for all we know, because he always did a great job of getting in the end zone with Big Ben in Pittsburgh. And then we kind of moved down the list. So first of all, Juju at that ADP, perfectly fine. Taking him as the wide receiver 27, I think he's such a high floor play. If you start out with a Tyreek Hill, a Deebo Samuel, a boom bust type guy, and one of these big play guys, Juju's the perfect guy as your wide receiver 2 or your flex. So moving down to MVS, wide receiver 44, I personally think Marquez Valdez-Scantling is going to have a similar role in Kansas City to what he had in Green Bay. I think there's going to be weeks where he goes 5 for 120 and a touchdown. And there's going to be a lot of weeks where he has 4 targets and brings in one of them for 25 yards. I just think he's a field stretcher. He's going to be used in that way. The contract is decent. I think it was 3 years, $30 million. But I just don't see him as one of these true alpha take over the game type wide receivers. We haven't seen that from him to this point in his career. He's had an elite quarterback. He's had games with Devontae Adams out as well where he could have stepped into that role. Didn't do it in Green Bay. But I'm still willing to take him as wide receiver 44. Like, why not? And then we move down to Sky Moore. Sky Moore is the one that I'm actually the most excited about. I think he has the most upside. And if there's a guy on this team that I think could emerge to finish as a top 15 wide receiver, I think it's Sky Moore. Now, maybe not in his rookie season. It's going to take a lot for him to get there. He's been battling some minor injuries through camp as well. But Sky Moore is one of those names that as the season goes along, as he gets more familiar with the offense, we could see him have one of these rises to the top, or by the back end of the season, he's an Amon-Ra St. Brown type. Hey, we saw some flashes in the first half, and now he's someone that's winning you your league in a high-powered offense over the back half of the year. He was a second-round draft pick. We loved the profile of a guy like Sky Moore, even out of a small school. So he's the one that I'm personally the most excited about and that I have the most shares of. And then Mecole Hardman, we know what he is. He's probably just going to be one of these gadget burner type guys. But with the absence of Tyreek Hill, who knows? And, with the last pick or a deep double-digit round pick in your draft, I'm fine to take him as well. And the good thing about these guys, especially MVS and Mecole Hardman, is you can take them so late in your draft that they don't really cost you anything. And week 1, we can see the snaps, we can see the targets. We'll probably get a better feel for this offense. And they're guys that you can cut. Like, I love Hardman because you can see what happens week 1, move on if he's not the guy. If he is the guy, you hold on to him. And that's a lot better, in my opinion, than some of these names that you feel like you can't drop because they're like decent enough to where someone might pick them up or they might have trade value. And then they're just stuck on your bench clogging your roster for most of the season. So a little long-winded there, Steph, but I'm in on all these guys. I'm interested to see, if you think this offense is going to break down how I do, kind of Juju as more of the volume play, low A dot, high floor guy, and then Sky Moore potentially as the breakout candidate with the other 2 stretching the field.
I think you pretty much nailed it, man.
Let's go.
Now, I was not in on Mecole really at all. Like, he wasn't even on my radar. I didn't look at any of his metrics prior to the show. But if you remember, at the time when he was drafted by the Chiefs, Tyreek Hill was under some allegations, and there was fear around the league, especially right at the time before the draft, that Tyreek might get suspended, might get banned, kicked out of the league, might go to prison. So that's when Mecole Hardman was taken. Interesting thought experiment to say, look, they've had Mecole as really a handcuff to Tyreek Hill over the last couple of years. Now that Tyreek's gone, maybe they say, hey, Hardman, like, this is your chance. This is what we drafted you to be. Can you fill in? I don't want to say all because he's just not Tyreek Hill. Nobody's Tyreek Hill. But can you give us some of that utilization in the offense? Interesting for Mecole Hardman. He's pretty much free in drafts right now.
One more thing I want to add on him. I mean, he's still only 24 years old. Like, we're so spoiled these days by wide receivers breaking out so early in their career. But Mecole Hardman, through 3 seasons, like going into his 4th year, this is like a normal timeline for a typical NFL wide receiver. Like, back in the 2000s and the 2010s, we saw guys take 2-3 seasons before they broke out. And you're absolutely right. Mecole Hardman was brought in to be potentially a Tyreek Hill replacement, ended up being a gadget guy, and they've utilized him in a lot of ways. And he's still flashed every single season, over 500 yards in his rookie year, over 500 yards in his second year. And last season, it kind of went unnoticed, but had career highs in targets, in receptions, in yards. Like, Mecole Hardman had 59 for 693 last season. Not too shabby. So now with additional opportunity in this offense, who knows? He could be the guy. And it's actually funny because about a month ago, I remember you texted me just out of the blue and you said, oh my gosh, is there a chance that Mecole Hardman is the guy in Kansas City and he could actually be the one we want? And I remember I just said no. I gave no analysis. I just said no. There's no shot. But to that point, I mean, what we're talking about today, it's all about potential upside, potential value at cost. And when it's basically free, I love taking a dart throw on Mecole late in drafts.
He was a second-round pick, a late second-round pick. I'm just saying, we've seen draft capital carry guys well into their careers. You're like, oh, Corey Davis is done. Mike Williams is done. The high-end draft capital gives them a little bit of leeway to hang around for the league, in the league, if they're not.
I mean, shoot, N'Keal Harry's still in the league. My goodness.
Apparently he's already dropping passes from Fields in camp. But I want to talk about the other receivers here. Juju, to me, his fantasy value honestly doesn't change. Like he was a flex last year. He was the number 3 last year, perceived behind Deontay and Claypool. I view him as the number 2 this year, behind Kelsey. And when did we see Juju have the 1,400-yard season? His big breakout year, his second year in the league, was when he had a true number 1 next to him. And now we have that with Travis Kelsey. So you add in a better offense for Juju, but more ambiguity in the receiver room. Like, it's unproven. It's a new system, right? Kelsey's still there, but I think all that's fine. It's not like he was going as a wide receiver 2 anyways last year. So if you liked Juju last year, I think you like him this year. And he's another guy, has the second-round draft capital, just like Mecole Hardman, has massive upside. If Kelsey happens to miss time, could see a target funnel in a Kansas City Chiefs offense with the best quarterback in the league. And Juju has always been, to me, like that big body slot receiver, like a Tyler Boyd, like an Adam Thielen. A CeeDee Lamb is kind of a beefed up version of this. It's a little more explosive. Eric Decker, who had 3,000-yard seasons, perfect example of what a Juju Smith-Schuster is. So it's like you take those names I just mentioned, put them in Kansas City. Shouldn't we be excited, regardless of what you think about the TikToks or whatever dumb narratives you want to come up with about Juju, the maturity? Get all that out of here. He's the type of player that when you put him in a good situation, like Golden Tate, where he can produce and he's going to be the solid, steady guy, isn't going to give you those Tyreek Hill 40-point fantasy weeks, but no one's expecting that, especially at wide receiver 27 off the board. And then with Sky Moore, he did open up camp healthy, which was really, really good to see. And Juju came out and already said Sky Moore looks great. He's taking snaps out of the backfield. I think they're trying to see, could Sky Moore play that gadget role for us? I know it's very early, like we're just days into camp, so I don't want to overreact to anything right now. And it's tough because we're coming off 2 years where there was very limited access for the media to be involved in camp, to be involved in preseason with all the COVID stuff. So now it's kind of like a readjustment of like, remember back when it was where you were seeing a million camp highlights and headlines come out leading up to the season? It's fun, but you just don't get too caught up in it. You know, we all saw how things broke down with Jamar Chase with all these drops in camp. He's going to be, and then comes out and he's one of the best guys that we thought he would be, should be, based on what he did in college and the draft capital coming in. So I like Sky Moore, like you said, as a breakout candidate in certain roster builds. He's a guy that, like, when I'm just praying there in like the 8th, 9th round, please, Sky Moore, just make it to me. And then he's there and it's an easy smash.
He's the perfect guy to have as your 4th wide receiver on your roster, because if you're in a 2 receiver, 1 flex league, like you don't have to rely on him to start him every single game. Maybe your wide receiver 5 on your roster is more of a high floor guy, like a Jamison Crowder type in a PPR league. So then you can let Sky Moore sit there, wait and see what happens, and you don't have to feel like you need to start him every single week, and you just have that upside on your team.
Sky Moore did crazy things in college. I know it was at a small school, but had one of the best, like, cleanest profiles, amazing combine, super quick, and just absolutely dominated next to NFL-level talent in Dwayne Eskridge as well. So let's shift over. Last team we'll talk about today, the New Orleans Saints, another new-look offense, both with the quarterback play, because we saw Jameis Winston for a bit. He kind of was throttled down some. Like, the pass point wasn't there. Kamara was getting a ton of carries on the ground, more than he's ever gotten in his career last year. But then they invest in Chris Olave. They bring in Jarvis Landry. They even invest in Andy Dalton. Abram Smith is a late round running back. Just dart, though.
They just brought in Malcolm Brown as well at running back.
I saw the Malcolm Brown signing. I'm still intrigued on Abram Smith. I'm not going to draft him, but he's like one of those guys. Week 1, he might be a guy I spent a lot of my fab dollars on if he gets any snap shares, even just splitting with Ingram or Brown or these guys. But really what we need to talk about here isn't so much like the player values. Right now, Michael Thomas, wide receiver 40, Olave, wide receiver 45, Jarvis Landry, wide receiver 60. So these are guys that are going as your wide receiver 4, 5, even 6 off the board right now. Michael Thomas is seeing a little bit of depressed ADP just because of the injury concerns. He was cleared for camp. He's on the field. Who knows if he's 100% really, because there was some skepticism of whether he was going to be ready. Was he even going to play this season? Was he going to start hurt? Was he going to demand a trade? But now it looks like it's all systems go out of nowhere. So how quickly do we adjust to Michael Thomas? And then Olave is a guy that you and I were obsessing over after the draft. We were like, New Orleans is a perfect landing spot. This is a great place for him to take over as a number 1 somewhere. And he looked like the most polished NFL-ready wide receiver in this 2022 draft class. So, Alex, talk to me about the Saints receivers and if Jameis is going to be back to his old ways or is he going to be throttled down like Sean Payton did with him last year?
It's tough with Jameis because I think in the opportunities he had, he looked good. Like he was fairly efficient, had a couple good games. It was weird. Like I think he had like a 5-touchdown game.
5-touchdown game, week 1.
Yards.
Week 1.
He had a weird season, but he looked fine and he was moving the offense just fine and had them very competitive. So but they had no receivers. So it's like Jameis looked good. They had no receivers. Marquez Callaway was their number 1. They've now brought in 3 guys that are going to be above him on this depth chart. So it's tough because it's like, was Jameis being throttled down because they knew they were going to have to kind of ground and pound and use the defense to try to win games? Or was it just a function of that's what the team wants to do? And now with Sean Payton gone, they hired their defensive coordinator as the head coach. I think it's going to continue to be a defensive-minded approach. But the interesting thing is that all of their offseason actions signal a more pass-friendly offense. Like I think they recognized the deficiency at receiver. They knew Michael Thomas was going to be back. And not only do they bring in Jarvis Landry as a free agent, they draft Chris Olave in the first round. So this is a team that clearly knew
traded up for Olave. Traded up for
Olave.
They
traded a lot to get Olave. But if this is a team that clearly knew they needed weapons, I think this is a team that wants to be balanced. They know with Alvin Kamara as their running back as well, that one of the best ways they can move the ball down the field is through the short passing game. When you have guys like Olave who can stretch the field, Michael Thomas who doesn't even need separation to get, slants across the middle. Sorry that I had to go there. I had to go there. And then dumping it off to Kamara on screen plays and things like that. And then you throw in Jarvis Landry as another guy who's just a veteran receiver who knows how to get open and knows how to win at any level against the zone, against man in this league. They're going to be able to move the ball, I think, through a lot of these dink and dunk passes. Probably are going to be a little bit run heavy, but then they're going to have the ability to go over the top on that deep ball with guys like Chris Olave. So I think this is going to be an interesting offense to monitor. I do expect the volume to be low, but when looking at the ADPs for this team, I like all of them. I am actually really coming around to Michael Thomas if I'm going to be able to get him in the 8th round, because I think there's a chance that he ends up being a top 15 wide receiver if he's fully healthy and back to form. Like I think that's in the range of outcomes for him. I'm not going to reach on him, and I think there are risks associated. But when you want upside late in your drafts, why not go with a guy who showed us that he can be the best wide receiver in the league? And I know we haven't really seen him at full strength for 2 seasons, but it's not like I just can't believe that he is completely washed now. You have to believe that he really was hurt. That's why he missed time, and that he's got something left in the tank. And even if he's a wide receiver 2, it's an incredible value to get him where he's going right now. And then with Chris Olave, another one of these rookies, I know we talked about Sky Moore earlier, that I think is interesting. He's going to be a big play guy. I think he's, if he gets 100 targets, I think it could be interesting for fantasy as someone you're rotating in and out of your flex and good matchups and things like that, because I think he is a supremely talented player. He was a 4-year college player and produced early and often. Even as a freshman, he produced at Ohio State. So this is a very mature guy on the football field who knows how to play the game. And I think he's going to translate to the NFL quite well. And that's what we talked about with Chris Olave when we were breaking down these rookies. Jarvis Landry, I don't know. I'm not so much in on him. I think he'll be fine. He's going to be almost like an Emmanuel Sanders was late in his career. Maybe he has some decent weeks. Maybe he has some flex appeal. But I just think there's going to be 10 Jarvis Landrys sitting on your waiver wire. So I don't really want to draft a guy like that. So I'm in on Michael Thomas. I'm in on Olave at ADP. Even in a lower volume offense, I think with Jameis back, there is some upside there for both of these guys to really outperform where they're going in drafts.
Yeah, Michael Thomas, wide receiver 40, was looking at the last week of underdog ADP.
I think that'll come up.
I'm going to guess in most home leagues, he's going well above that. I bet you he's going as a low-end wide receiver 2 in a lot of home leagues just because he is such a household name. People remember that 2019 Drew Brees record-setting season where he did things we haven't seen before at the wide receiver position. And what's really intriguing about Jameis Winston as well, when I was doing the research for Russell Wilson, right, I was excited about Russell Wilson. I was like, let me put some numbers behind some of the efficiency, things like that. It was weird how many times Jameis Winston's name was in the top 10. We were looking at yards per game, adjusted yards per completion. Like, yes, he threw the 30 interceptions, which is what turned him into a backup, right? Like, I can't sweep that under the rug under any circuit. Like, that's horrible. Throwing 30 picks will get you benched in the NFL. End of point. Like, but is there a world where the upside is there because we've seen that from Jameis and because they're signaling the pass-heavy approach? We also don't know. Alvin Kamara still has an investigation going on any day now, could be suspended for 4 games, 6 games, has caught a battery charge. We don't know what's going to happen with his suspension. And if they can't run the ball with Kamara, if they can't check it down to Kamara, I think it means nothing but positive things for the receivers. But the guy I want, the guy I'm circling that I'm looking for in drafts is Olave. Olave is another one of these breakout candidates as a rookie. Michael Thomas hasn't had the cleanest bill of health, even if he's on the field starting week 1. There is a likelihood or some probability that he gets hurt. Jarvis and Michael Thomas are just older receivers. They're good, they're proven, but, I mean, they're in their late 20s. Whereas you have Chris Olave, this young blood, looking great in camp, getting hyped up by the organization, by the coaches, especially with, Dennis Allen and Mickey Loomis, like, trading up together. Like, they are in on Olave as an organization. I think they know he is the future. And I think he's a guy we could see have a monster breakout down the stretch, very similar to what we saw last year to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Okay, Adam Troutman's still there, but it's not really like you're not worried about him. He didn't do anything last year when everyone wanted the big breakout. Maybe he's a post-hype sleeper. You can take a dart throw on him, whatever. I'm not going to tell you to do that. But Olave is the guy I want just because he has such a clean profile other than staying in the NFL for 4 years. We saw Devonta Smith do that, and he's been fine so far in the NFL. And I think we see nothing but continued improvement in Devonta Smith's production, even with A.J. Brown there, as he continues to improve as a receiver, as a player. If either Jalen Hurts takes a step up or they bring in somebody in the draft, like, we expect big things for Devonta Smith career long. And I think Chris Olave is going to have an opportunity this season to actually prove that he's the number 1 wide receiver. I know that's a hot take with Michael Thomas there and what he did in 2019, but the guy hasn't played football in a year and a half, and we see the likes of Julio Jones, of Antonio Brown, of A.J. Green, right? These older receivers that just you hit a breaking point. Andre Johnson's done this. Randy Moss has done this. Like, there's a long, long list of receivers that once they hit that late 20 age and they start to break down a little bit, it's that cliff. And if this is the cliff for Michael Thomas, if he's already fallen off that cliff, missing a year and a half of football in his late 20s, past his prime, this could be the clear path for Olave to be that number 1 and a potentially high-flying offense with Jameis Winston. But even if it's not high-flying, I still want a potential wide receiver 1 breakout. And Olave was outproducing Garrett Wilson in college. He was great in the combine, ran the 4.3, got the draft capital. It's everything you want in Olave, and so I'm willing to bet on the talent because I don't even think the situation's that bad. So it's just win-win across the board for Olave, and you're getting him at a perfect price as your wide receiver 4, as a bench play that you hope breaks out and takes you over the top and turns into a league winner, especially in the back half of the season. But Alex, that is it for today's show. If you like what you hear on the channel, like us up, greatly appreciated. Thank y'all so much for listening and watching. We'll see y'all next time. Peace.